So thank you for joining us this evening. Today we will be looking at encouraging struggling readers in primary schools with Juliette. So join Juliette as she shares some of her favourite tricks and titles to encourage kids to fall in love with books. We will talk comics, novels, non-fiction, poetry, wordless books and more, and try to answer any burning questions you may have. Juliette is a professional bookworm who loves using words, stories, and books to help kids rediscover and grow their creativity. So without further ado, I will pass you over to Juliette. Thank you, Juliette.
Thanks, Eva. Thanks, everybody, for being here today and for the future yous for watching back whenever you get the chance. As Eva said, I'm a professional bookworm, which is to say that I do an awful lot of things with books. I write them, I read them, I review them, I recommend them, I build forts with them, you know, the things you do with books. And I'm really happy to be here today sharing some of my favorite tried and tested titles that I have shared over the years with readers of all ages, because one of my other jobs is that I am a book doctor. I work in Children's Books Ireland's book clinics, where we very seriously and very officially wear white coats and talk to kids, again, of all ages, about the things they enjoy reading, which is not always the same thing. And we try and come up with new things for them to try. So you guys know what it's like to be in front of a bunch of kids with a range of interests and a range of abilities. And you guys know everything about teaching and about literacy. But you guys are also very busy, so you don't have time to read all of the books. And that is kind of where we try and come in to help. So today it's really about reading for joy, reading for pleasure, trying to find the right book for the right child. So while I don't know who your students are, and I don't know what particular questions or needs you may have, I do know that there are some things that keep coming up at book clinics and elsewhere. You know, you always get the kid who has read all of the Wimpy Kid, and what are they going to read now, I ask you. Or you have the kid who just wants to play video games all day and books are just don't feature in their lives. So I'm going to try and go over these sort of big questions sorry, and again, share some titles because, you know, I think that's probably the most useful thing for you guys is to have action titles that you can go to and use in your classrooms. So let me see. Oh, this is me. This is some of my books because I write. So I write again for all ages. The only people I haven't written for yet are teenagers because they are scary. But you never know. I'm growing up every year, so maybe one day I will write for them. But here are just some of my books, so you get to see kind of where I'm coming from into this. I think the first thing to encourage reading for pleasure and joy in a classroom, I think, is to take the work out of reading because, you know, reading is hard. Reading requires stamina and dedication. And sometimes it's just one thing too many. So if only there was a responsible grown-up in the classroom who could take on the job, who could sacrifice themselves and take on that job of being the reader for others, and just find some cracking books to share with their class. I think that would go a long way towards helping kids fall in love with books and with reading in general. The best way to do this is to just, you know, pick a book or let the kids pick the book and sit down and read it and try and do that. Try and pick a moment during the day when you can do that, maybe every day. It's kind of your mini golden book, your bookish golden time, because then it sets up a ritual and what you're doing, as well as entertaining, is that you are, again, you're taking the work out, you're making it easy for the kids to get through a book, through a story, because you're doing the hard mechanical work of the reading. But you're also sharing, you're building a shared literary canon, you know, books you've read together, then everybody knows them, everybody can talk about them and reference them. So I would say about these books, you can pick a book that happens to have a link with something else that you're doing. If you're doing history, you might pick historical fiction that's set in the same period. But what I would say is absolutely resist the urge to draw parallels, because that's just going to sound like another lesson and not the free gift of reading. However, if you have something that relates to other things that you're teaching at the same time, and if the kids make the connections themselves, then those connections are going to be so much stronger, so much more useful to everyone, because it will have come directly from their own listening and their own thinking. So let me see. If we start with younger readers, these are a hoot. Okay. The Book with No Pictures by B.J. Novak. You've probably come across some videos of people or B.J. Novak reading the book to rooms full of kids in stitches. It is a book that has no pictures. So all the work is on you. You're reading that text, and the text tells you to do some pretty silly things, and usually the audience just loves it. So it's a book where you really put yourself out there, but it's very effective, very funny, and it works well in a group sort of setting. I don't know if any of you have come across John Kane. This was his first book. I say ooh, you say ah. Now, that is a book that begs for audience participation, because every time you say ooh, they have to say ah. Except that's only how it begins, because very quickly it involves saying and doing other things, and it's also very, very silly, and as maybe the donkey with knickers on his head might hint at. That's everything you need to know about that book. It is very funny. It's also a good one for exploring and helping build a sense of humor in kids, a sense of the absurd. It is, as I said, a hoot. And so John Kane has a few more books, and they're all kind of on that principle. So he's a good one to explore if you have a class who likes a good giggle. Then we have Rabbit and Bear. So Rabbit and Bear are friends. Rabbit he's a bit intense, let's put it this way. He has some anger issues, I think, also. And he's a bit on the selfish side. Whereas Bear is just lovely and very friendly and a little bit naive. But they have, I think, maybe 6 adventures now at this stage. My personal favorite is The Pest in the Nest, which is actually about anger, but also about the fear of strangers and new people and change. And it's extremely funny. It's got gross bits every time you need a gross bit. And at the same time, it really delivers on those interesting messages that will have the kids thinking. They have brilliant illustration throughout. So they're novels, they're not picture books, they are like young novels. The only thing I would say with those, and it's either a good thing or a bad thing, is that they're not broken up into chapters. So it's very hard to know when to stop. And if you decide you're only going to read 10 pages, you want to be strong and stick to those 10 pages, because chances are your audience is going to just ask for 1 more or 2 more. And you don't have a chapter break to stop at naturally. But those are all really, really good, really brilliant. And Rabbit and Bear works as well as an early reader for a beginning confident reader, if that's a thing. But they're perfect for that kind of 5 to 8 age group. Now, if we look at older books, what you want in books to read aloud to older classes, I think, is a cracking story and, cliffhangers. And those really, those on screen, they really do the trick. Rugby Academy is all about rugby. And reading it really feels like you're watching a game and you're listening to the commentators, you know, giving you a running commentary on the game. It is really, really good. It's short, it's punchy. And because our hero knows nothing about rugby because he comes from a football background, then even if you're not into rugby and you don't know anything about it, you'll get it because he needs to learn too. So we learn with him. So that's a cracking read. The Summer I Robbed the Bank is just a hoot. It is very, very funny and completely bonkers. As it's the story of some kids who, well, yeah, decide that they need to rob a bank. They have a good reason. They're not particularly good at it, but they're going to try and make it work. And it is just very silly, very funny. And what's interesting with this one is that it's set on, well, in Dublin at first, and then they go to Achill Island. So it's a setting that will be familiar to readers, even if they've never been to Achill. You know, it is Ireland, and it's nice to read a funny book set where you live. Meanwhile, Fuzzy Mud. So Louis Sachar or Sachar, I've never learned how to say his name. You know him from Holes, and Holes is gold. Holes is just brilliant. Everybody knows about Holes. Nobody knows about Fuzzy Mud, but Fuzzy Mud is amazing because in Fuzzy Mud, the kids discover an oozing goo up in the hills that is apparently very, very dangerous, and that keeps expanding and colonizing the area. And basically, every chapter tells you how many harmful bacteria are being released, and it's exponential. So the chapter number goes from 1 to a lot very, very quickly. And I mean, in terms of wanting to read the next chapter, that is, it is really, really spectacular. And now Race to the Frozen North, that's completely different now. It's Katherine Johnson. It's a short novel that looks at the exploration of the passage of the Northwest. And so it's historical fiction, but it also has a lot to say about racial prejudice and who do we remember in the history books. It is a cracking read, short, really snappy chapters, big adventure, big feels. It's really good. And this one also exists as Gaeilge. So for any teachers out there wanting to read books to their class in Irish, this is a good one to look at for. And let me see, what else have I got? So for older classes, still, so all of those I would say are really kind of a 4th, 5th, and 6th, the last page and this slide. Those are also brilliant. Now they're getting a bit more meaty, I want to say. The Chime Seekers is kind of a classic fairy gone bad story because it's the story of 2 kids who have to go into fairyland because Yanni's baby sister has been stolen by an evil fairy and swapped with a pretty scary changeling. It's really inventive. It's really, again, big feelings and a lot of thinking and a lot of action. And it's a labyrinth type of book. So that might give you some flashbacks as well to good movies of old. So that is a really good one. Locked Out Lily is, it is slightly spooky. So it's a good Halloween read maybe for next year. It's the story of Lily, she's sick, she's in hospital a lot, and her parents have just had a new baby or having a new baby. So she's been sent to live with her granny, but she's having none of it. So she runs off during the night to go back to her house. But when she gets there, she realizes that there's somebody in there already, somebody who look like her parents, and but who are not. They are replacements, as they're called. And it's really giving Coraline vibes if you've read or seen that. So it is on the more creepy side because Lily has one night to figure a way to get back into the house. That's why she's locked out. and she gets help from some really unexpected corners, and it's brilliant. But yeah, slightly spooky. Whereas Amari will work really well if you have fans of Harry Potter. That's a long haul read, and there are 2 books in the series at the minute. But it's well worth the exploration, because it's the story of Amari, whose brother has disappeared, and nobody seems too bothered by it except her. And one day she finds in his room, she finds a suitcase that is ticking, and that only she can see and open. And inside there's an invitation to a summer tryout at the mysterious Bureau of Supernatural Affairs. And then she realizes there's this whole world of magic and magical creatures, and they're all pretty, well, she's pretty badass herself. There's tons of creatures, there's tons of baddies, there's potential friends. It's a bit like Hogwarts, in the sense that she's away from home and learning stuff, and that there are potential traitors and enemies everywhere, and big good versus evil sort of fights. And it is, yeah, no, it is again a cracking read. It's really good. Amari and the Night Brothers. And then on the lighter end of things, you have a homeroom and hall passes, which might be a little tricky to find, but it's worth seeking out if you can, because this one is it's kind of a reverse. It's the reverse of the Jumanji, because usually in books that are about games and gaming and role-playing games, the characters are going to fall into the game and have to survive there. Whereas this time, the real world is a world that looks a lot like Dungeons and Dragons, and the heroes in there fall into the world of their game. Their game is called Homeroom and Hall Passes, and it looks a lot like an American middle school with teachers and breaks and having to need a hall pass to get to the loo during class and all of that sort of stuff. So it's flipped, and it's really funny, but it's also tons of action and all the classic fantasy stuff of, you know, people swinging massive hammers in the middle of the canteen. And it's very successful. It's a good one. How are we doing so far? I'm not keeping an eye on the chat, just because I can't look at everything at the same time. So let me just catch up.
All good, Juliette.
Cool. Ooh, Thief by Mallory Blackman. Cool. I'm going to be taking notes as well. Okay, so that was the first tip, if you want, is to take the work out of the reading and make it easy for the kids, so that they can just relax, basically, and enjoy books without having to work themselves for it. My second tip would be to make it short, because you know, a great book doesn't have to come in 27 volumes or have 500 pages, basically. And one great place to start, you know, because reading really, stamina can be an issue. You know, even when you master the mechanics of it, stamina can be an issue, sustaining attention can be an issue, making time for it can be an issue. So if you can find a really good book that is really good in a few pages and a few words, then I think you can be onto a winner for many people. I mean, let's face it, we are, even as grown-ups, you know, we enjoy a quick read too, and there's absolutely no shame in that. So a great place to look for really good books that are both at the right level of interest for a child of a particular age and really short and easy to read is the wonderful Barrington Stoke publishers. What they do is they do these high-low books. That means high interest, low ability, meaning, as it says on their website, where I stole this from, meaning that the content is appropriate to the age of the reader, but the text is edited to suit a lower reading age. So it means that you don't have to worry so much about the mechanics of reading. You don't have to worry so much about being in for the long haul. you can just read some really brilliant stories in a few pages. Barrington Stokes only uses really established, brilliant writers for kids. So it's not like it's a second-rate book that you're going to get. You're getting stories from the best writers out there. And it means that you can say, oh yeah, I've read Mallory Blackman too. Oh yeah, I've read Russ Montgomery or whoever. And again, it's about building that that shared reading experience and that shared literary canon. So they have books for, they have books for every age from 5 or 6 in every possible genre. On the website, you can look up, you can search for books from based on the reading age or the interest age, and by category. So if you want historical fiction, or if you want funny, or if you want fantasy, you can put in everything in there and it will come up with a bunch of suggestion. And all of the books, as you can see there, are kind of rated for the reading age RA and the interest age IA. And they have books for everybody all the way to young adults, and they are just really good. They also have a whole lot of resources and tips and recommendations on the website. So it's well worth taking the time to look, especially if you have readers who are struggling with dyslexia or anything like that. They will have lots of resources and tips, and they are just brilliant. And also, the last thing to say about those is that the books are tested. They have kid readers and young people who read their books when it's still at the stage of manuscript. So all of them get kind of the stamp of approval from the young people who the books are destined to, which is but which nobody else does, as far as I know. And so that is a brilliant thing. So make it easy, make it short. Another way of making it short is to look for really different books that we often don't think about, and those would be poetry books and verse novels. So for anybody who doesn't know, a verse novel is a story told entirely in poems. That doesn't mean that it rhymes necessarily. Sometimes it does. Most of the time it doesn't. It's very often in free verse. Sometimes it might be taking other forms. But what it means is that there is a lot of white space on the page, and that is just nice to rest your eyes, and it's just less intimidating. And it doesn't mean there's less work, because there is less work for the mechanical side of reading again, but there is more work for the reader in terms of engaging their imagination and their reflection, because they have to plug the gaps of where the text might have been in a prose novel, which are not in the verse novel because it's really pared down. But it means at the same time that you can really zoom through a novel and read a big chunky novel that is satisfying, that has all of the ins and outs of relationships, of adventure, of whatever, without having to read 80,000 words of text. So that is a very, very valuable thing. But sorry, I ran ahead there with the verse novels. I'm going to talk about a couple of verse novels in a minute. But these are all absolutely brilliant poetry books, which for some reason all feature the sky or the wind. I don't know. I don't know why, but they are really, really good. I Am the Wind only came out last year, and they are, as it says, Irish poems for children everywhere, with a bunch of some classic poems, but also some very recent and brand new poems. So there are lots and lots of different voices that you can hear there, which is great. Lots and lots of different forms of poetry as well. And it's got some illustrations which are pretty cool, and will be also jumping points for conversations. Hopscotch in the Sky, I'm hopscotching to that one, is a book of poetry written by Lucinda Jacob, who is one of the editors of I Am the Wind. And they are just gorgeous poems, who again are set in Ireland, if you can say that about a poem. But what I mean by this is that a lot of kids in your schools are going to go, oh yeah, we have that kind of a street in our town. Oh yeah, the letterbox is that color where we live, which is always nice because it just creates connection between the reader and what they're reading about. Cloud Soup are just some brilliant poems, and as teachers, honestly, you're going to love those because there is so much you could do. I know we're talking about reading for pleasure, but talk about writing for pleasure as well there for a minute, because Kate Wakeling is an absolutely brilliant writer of poetry, and her poems look very simple in the sense that they look like you could write them yourselves. And actually this book and the other one, Poem The Winds Blew In, they both come at the end with suggestions on how to write your own poems, taking inspiration from the poems in the books, and they are brilliant. So if you're looking to work on poetry in your class, you would do very well with those, because they're just lovely and useful, which is, you know, double brownie points there. So those are some really good poetry collections where the poems are not going to do your head in. They're very accessible, they're great fun, and they talk about everyday things that you can relate to, even though sometimes they take flights of fancy, which are absolutely brilliant. So highly recommend those. And now back to verse novels, which are either yellow or blue in this selection. I don't know why, but they're all really good, really interesting, and they all do something different. In the Key of Code is a verse novel about finding who you are, and also coding. And there are actual lines of code in there. It's built into the story, and it's really something that you have to see to believe. That I would say is for the higher end of primary school. So I'm going to say 5th or even 6th class for this one. Rhyme Schemer. What's really interesting about Rhyme Schemer is that our hero is actually a bully. Bullies don't really get to star in books or have their voices heard directly. Well, we just hear them scream at the hero usually, but this time, because the bully is also the hero, we get to hear what's going on inside his head. And it is really interesting because what's going on inside this kid's head is that he's a poet and he writes poetry, or rap, depending how you want to look at it. Otter is about an otter. And when you read this, it sounds like you're listening to David Attenborough. I mean, it's a story. It's got characters who are all animals. Well, it's mostly Otter herself. And about what happens, because she's very carefree and she likes to live dangerously, to the point that she gets attacked by a shark. But honestly, it's like reading or watching one of the best nature documentaries, where you get to hear what the animals are thinking inside their heads. It is really brilliant, really, really good. And the last 5th grade of Emerson Elementary. Now, this one is what's really clever about this one. So it is set in a school that's going to close down. They're going to, the decision's been made already before the book starts. This is after this year, the school will be destroyed to make room for a supermarket or something. But the interesting thing about this book is that these guys, they're in their last year of primary school. There are 18 students in the class, and each of them has a voice, because there are 18 points of view in this novel. And every time, you know, it's really well done. There's a little picture with the face of the kid who's talking. They all have their own style, they all have their own voice. So it's not confusing at all. You know who's who. And you follow them through this year when the school is going to be destroyed and they have to build a time capsule, and some of them are delighted about it, some of them are really sad, and it's about change and all of these things. So again, 5th and 6th class, I think, but in particular 6th class, obviously, because it's their last year of primary school. school. So that is a really good one. And Love That Dog Now. That is a classic. It's a story about a kid who hates poetry, doesn't want to be writing poetry, but that's what the teacher wants him to do. So he has to write in his copy, and the first thing he writes is boys don't write poetry, girls do. And that's the first page, and that's it. And then you turn the page and there's just a little bit more, but because he has to. And obviously over the weeks and months he writes more, and it's not just about poetry, it's about that dog there on the cover. And I'm not going to say anything more about the dog because you'll have to read it to find out. But just to show you, this is what it might look like inside of a verse novel. And you could see how it's a breath of fresh air, because there's not so much on the page. I know the page on the right is busy and messy, but that's the whole point, because on that page, which is it's from Alice in Wonderland on the right-hand side, our hero, who's the rhyme schemer, bully I mentioned before, he's found all these books, old books in the library, and he's decided to kind of rewrite them by doing what is essentially blackout poetry. So he's just circled the interesting stuff and blacked out the rest, and written his own poetry by just highlighting the important bits. So again, you don't have to read all of the text, you just read the highlights, the important stuff. There you go. How are we keeping? I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you all, guys.
All good, Juliette. Thank
all
you.
good?
Yeah.
Super.
So it's and it's 25 to 7, so 25 minutes left. So you're doing really good for time.
Perfect. Okay, so we have made it easy. We have made it short. We have we're now going to make it physical, because some readers will want to move around or do stuff, and just reading, quote unquote, may not be active enough for them. So one way of combining kids who like to be active with reading is to take a book that's on the choose your own adventure format, which all of these are, and they are for different age groups. Because then the beauty of this is that you're not just reading to get to the end of the page. You are reading to see what action is required of you, and you have a decision to make. So it means you're much more in charge and in control. It's a less passive activity then. And you get these kinds of books from for readers of, again, all ages. So like Once Upon a Fairy Tale, for example, by the O'Hara sisters. It's a picture book. It's quite a wordy picture book, I would say, compared to some picture books. But again, at the end of every page or double page, it will ask you, well, do you want to go to the castle, or do you want to go through the forest? Are you meeting a mermaid, or are you meeting an elf? And depending on what you answer, you go to a different page, and the story continues in a different way. So you don't have to read the entire book, because you can decide to go one way with one reading and change your mind the next time you read. And you're in charge. It's up to you. You're not just a reader, you are the kind of the director of this, of the story. Pokemon, I choose you. Okay, you're not just choosing you, you're choosing everything from the start to the finish. And it is, again, a classic thing. Like the Warlock of Firetop Mountain, that would be an absolute classic from back in the, I'm going to say, 80s, where you choose, you roll the dice even, and you decide where you're going. And it is kind of Dungeons and Dragons stuff in novel format. And those books are still around, and they're still very popular. And you very often die after about 4 chapters, but that's okay. You can try. You can always come back and try different things and see how if it works out better for you the next time. The Create Your Own Spy Mission by Andrew Judge and Chris Judge. Now, There's a whole series of those. There's the Spy Mission, there's the Fantasy Adventure, there's I can't remember now, but there are maybe 4 or 5 of them. And those books, it's not just that you choose what's happening, you also get to write and draw on the book, and maybe sometimes punch holes through the paper. So it is, again, it's active, it's physical. It's just not a great library book because the book would be ruined very quickly. And then the Choose Your Own Tasty Adventure there, I have that there because it works like the other books, except that it is it's a cookbook where you choose your ingredients, and depending on what you choose, you end up with one recipe rather than another. So, you know, all of this is possible, and then some. So all of these, I would say, would work well from, well, there's every age on this slide, really. But then I wanted to show you these guys because these are, okay, Press Here by Hervé Tillet is magic. Do you see that yellow dot there? Well, if you press it and then you turn the page, well, now there's 2 yellow dots. And if you press those and turn the page, now there's 3. But what if you tap one of them twice? Well, now this one, once you've turned the page, it's become red. And so on. And so with this book, the reader or the person you're reading to has to come up to the book and do stuff with it. It is very physical because at some point you will be shaking the book and all of the dots will be all over the place. So you're going to have to blow on them to bring them back to the middle. It's very funny, and it is really, really interesting to see that, to read it to a group of young kids because it works. So I would say this one, junior infants, early start, and even senior infants. It is really cool, and there's no end of art that you could do inspired by this book. It's really brilliant. Meanwhile, You Choose. What's interesting about You Choose is that it is so there's a series of books. There's no story in those books. They're just big double spread illustrations that are teeming with detail. Lots of characters, animals, things. And there's just one question. There's like one line of text, which is a question, which goes something like, if you could live anywhere, where would you choose? And you have lots of different kinds of houses and caravans and space stations and canal boat to choose from. So it's kind of a choose your own adventure, except there's no adventure. It's all up to you, the reader, to make up your adventure, and you get to choose everything from where you might live to what you might put in your house. And there you have everything like, you know, fridges and trampolines and chandeliers and loo rolls. So it's that gorgeous level of detail. And the books are also very diverse, which is great because it means anybody is going to find themselves in the book, either because the characters look like them or because they're doing something they'd love to do. So those are really, really good to get your imagination to work out as well. And I Hate Reading is just so funny. So this one's for slightly older readers. I'd say 6+ maybe. I Hate Reading, or 6+. I don't know, maybe first class. It is just hilarious because there's 2 books in that series, I Hate Reading and the book Nobody Wanted to Read. And it's just tricks to the book is talking to you, the reader, giving you tricks on how to pretend to be reading, to be seen to be reading. And of course, as you do it, you're actually reading the book. But it is done in a really funny, non-patronizing way. It is very, very brilliant. Okay, and then there's nonfiction, like we were talking about the cookbook, but nonfictions are books too. You know, let's not forget about them. And there's good reading in nonfiction, and why not tap into your pupils' interests? Because again, what's great about nonfiction is that, okay, you have all the special interests, but also the text is often very bite-sized. It's great for things like visual literacy. And again, it is active because some of these books are an actual call to action. So the Backyard Explorer will have you go around your neighborhood doing like a graph of how many different types of cars or different colors of cars are going by your window, for example. Be a Super Awesome Artist presents you with 20 works of art and 20 art challenges for you to try, inspired by the works of art that are presented in the book. And this is not a maths book. Excuse me. This is not a maths book. It has to be seen to be believed because it is art and math all together. Ooh, sorry, I need to cough. I was doing so well. Okay. The next big thing I want to talk about is, I just mentioned visual literacy, and making it visual can really, really help. Again, some people just prefer having pictures to keep an eye on, and there are so many really good, highly illustrated novels for young readers of maybe 7 and up, 8 and up, 9 and up, like these. This is what I was talking about for kids who have read all of the Wimpy Kid. These are really, really good. The 13-Story Treehouse is just completely bonkers. I mean, that's another one that has to be seen to be believed. It's about these kids who have a treehouse in their back garden, but it's got 13 stories, 13 floors, and there's something completely mad on each, like, you know, a swimming pool full of sharks or whatever. And in each book, they visit each story. It's also great for maths because the second book is called the 26-story treehouse, and then the 39-story treehouse. So if you ever want anybody to learn their timetables of 13, this is the series for them. Accidental Diary of Bug, again, diary. So you know, you're in good hands. It's very, very funny. Loki is outrageous because it is about the Norse god who has done one prank too many, and he's sent to Earth to live in the body of a small human boy, and he hates it, and he's trying to get out of it, but until he can prove he's become good, he can't. And it is very funny too. And Freddy versus School is also great. It's the story of this kid who is a robot, but who lives with humans, and he's got superpowers, and he's been told he's not allowed to use his laser eyes and his power rockets in school, and he finds it very unfair. And all of these are very highly illustrated, which makes the reading very exciting, because sometimes you're not sure if you're reading a novel or if you're reading a comic, and it is, yeah, it's cool. Those are really, really good ones. And then if you want to push the visual aspect, have a look at The Invention of Hugo Cabret by Brian Selznick, it's a massive book. Okay, this is like all of your Ryanair luggage allowance if you take it on your holidays. It's huge, but about half of it is told completely in pictures, and half of it is told in words. And it is really half and half, in the sense that the pictures tell the story, or part of the story. They don't repeat, they don't illustrate. And likewise, the words, they don't repeat the pictures. They pick up where the pictures left off, and vice versa. Which means, again, you get through this book quite quickly, even though it's big and intimidating. And it's just beautiful to look at. It's really cool. And it makes a lot more sense than the movie Hugo did, I think. But you could have a cine book club and compare the two. Why not? Then for younger readers, you'd be looking at things like that. Like the John Klassen books are great for kids who are, I'd say, towards the end of senior infants, first class, because funny story, some text, but not a lot. Great interaction between the text and the images. Charlie and Mouse. Charlie and Mouse is the same. It's small stories inside a book. There's a few in the series. And what's really good about Charlie and Mouse is that it's a really good mixture. There's more text than in John Classen, but it's a really good mix of words that you can sound out and tricky words. And I thought they really got the balance really, really well in those. And then Elephant and Piggy by Mo Willems are just brilliant. And what's super about them is that, again, I'd say towards maybe the end of senior infants, you get to read a huge book. There's like 64 pages in the book, and the kid can read that by themselves. And it's just such a sense of accomplishment, as well as a ton of giggles, because they're all very funny. And Mo Willems used to work for Sesame Street, so he is really good on pacing, on rhythm, and on the interaction between pictures and text. So those are really, really good. Then you have the whole world of graphic novels. Those are graphic novels for the younger end. The party, Fox and Chicks, that's really about, that's really for emergent readers, because you've maybe 4 panels to a page and very little text, but it's lovely and great fun and easy to follow. Narwhal's Unicorn of the Sea. It's nearly a graphic novel. It's, again, for young readers, it is very funny and silly. Mr. Wolf's Class, a bit like the last 5th grade of Emerson Elementary, follows lots and lots of different characters, which is really, really nice, because you get to know lots of them. And they're all in Mr. Wolf's class, and everybody's a bit worried about Mr. Wolf, but actually he's a good guy. It's funny, it's gentle, and it's really, really, really good. Barb the Brave is a hoot. I mean, everything you see on the cover should give you a hint as to what kind of book that is. Sorry, I have a lot of graphic novels. We read a lot of graphic novels in this house. Two-Headed Chicken. If you have a fan of Dogman, go and find the Two-Headed Chicken. It is crazy. It's bonkers. It's very funny. It's mad. Cardboard Kingdom is gorgeous. It is such a diverse book. There is every kind of kid in there, and it's short chapters of interlinked stories. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the first Cat in Space Ate Pizza, also for fans of Dogman, it is very funny in a kind of deadpan way. It's very big, but again, there are some moments when there's no text at all. It is also a good one. And these would be graphic novels for slightly older readers. Well, not Luna and the Treasure of Tlaloc. Just this series are really good, because they're all about mythology, and it's halfway between a picture book and a graphic novel. So those ones would be for younger readers. But then the others, Ride On, if you have any people who are into either horses or friendship. I hear there are quite a few of those. Ride On is really good. Global is very current, so it's not non-fiction, but it's all about the climate crisis and all of this. It's very powerful, and that is definitely like an older end. And then you're going to find some really good adaptation of classics. So that, again, that shared literary canon, there's lots of ways of getting to it. And this particular one, Tom's Midnight Garden by Edith, is a really good, beautiful adaptation of the classic. Nearly there. I just wanted to give a shout out to some manga, because I know manga can be intimidating for us grown-ups. The kids are fine. But these are all really nice. The Magus of the Library is about books. Hey! So, and traveling librarians who are really kind of badass, going around on their horses, and really cool. Astra Lost in Space, bunch of kids, they go to planet camp, they get stranded 5 million light years away. They have to make their way back. It is very bam, 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 lots of action. It's really cool. Penguin and House, my daughter swears by this. It is ridiculous story of a college student who lives with a penguin, And the penguin just loves doing all the work around the house, and the college student doesn't care. But it's just funny interaction between the two. Ah, I have 7 minutes. Will I make it? Yes, I will, because I have just 2 final slides to share with you, and I think they're important. One of them is to try and thinking of the visual and of making it easy on your readers, is to try picture books with older readers. I don't know if you've ever tried this, because very often we consider that picture books are for the younger end, but some picture books have a lot to offer, and some of these you can see here. And we'll start lots of very interesting conversations about lots of different things. That could be history, or could be feelings, or could be geopolitics, or whatever. So all of these there are really worth looking at. And the very final thing, and I'll stop after that, because if we have questions then we have time, is wordless picture books, because wordless picture books are awesome. They are, as it says on the tin, books where the whole story is told without a word of text. So it's great for visual literacy. It's great for things like reading emotions, and facial expressions and body language. It's great for sequencing and for deduction and for inference and all of this. And these are really, and they're just beautiful to look at. If you have a very diverse school community as well, if you have parents who maybe don't have much English, this is a great way because that's a book that they can share, because there's no text. It could be written in any language. So those are all really good. The Arrival, just a note on The Arrival, that's a graphic novel that has no text, or at least no text that you can read. It is really quite special, and it works well from the age of 8 or 9 and up. And there's tons to say about it, and it is all really brilliant. Phew.
Fantastic. Thank you, Juliette. Well done. That was amazing. We actually got a really interesting question from Connor. And I know everybody's come across a student like this. So Connor has said, "All this is amazing. I wonder what you do about the incredibly resistant reader, the kid who just point blank refuses to even touch a book."
And is there no way to get to that kid through their other interests, whatever they may be, if it's a sports thing, or if it's a craft thing, or if it's a video game, or
yeah, that's
because
usually, yeah.
I think I would try there, and it depends on the age as well, of the incredibly reluctant reader. And I think the other thing is that sometimes, oh, this is going to sound terrible and you're all going to hate me, and I know I'm being recorded, but sometimes it's okay not to like books. I think what's really important is that you get your stories, that you get your empathy, that you get your excitement from somewhere. I'd go looking for these in books, but it's not going to work for absolutely everybody. So if you've tried all the books in the world and none of them have worked on the super resistant reader, well, then maybe that reader needs their stories from somewhere else. And maybe that's music, and maybe that's movies. I don't know. I want to know more about the super resistant reader, Connor.
Right. Have we any other questions from anybody else? We've got 3 minutes left, so we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. If anybody would like to type it into the chat or unmute themselves and ask away.
I see. Well, we'll have to have a separate chat then, Connor.
And the recording will be available, and Juliette will also send over her slides, and I'll send them over to everybody as well. So thank you everybody for joining us. I don't think we have any questions, Juliette. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording now.